I woke up in a cold sweat. It was the third time that week. You see, in a few days, my wife and I were going to move into our new house. It should have been a time of joy and excitement, but I was having nightmares. I kept having the same reoccurring dreams. Someone was going to throw bricks through our windows, spray painted slurs across our garage, did whatever they could to help drive us out of there. Where was this fear coming from? Why did I keep having this same nightmare over and over again? The night before the moving trucks would arrive, we went to the house to clean up. And I remember being in the kitchen looking into the backyard, and I would see the rear neighbor's dog, and we made eye contact, and immediately he started barking ferociously and dove towards the fence like he was trying to break through. And I remember thinking to myself as I stood there frozen, like, is this what it's going to be like to live here? Am I always going to feel like an outsider in my own home? The fears didn't just spring out of nowhere. It was a result of things that I've carried with me for years. My first feelings of not belonging, I remember thinking back to elementary school and having teachers treat me differently from the other students, punish me disproportionately for doing the same types of things as all the other kids. I remember having one teacher who actively tried to fail me and prevent me from moving forward. In high school, when I went out for the co-op program to work in an office somewhere, my guidance counselor blocked it and they made me work in the mall instead. When I went to go for university-level courses, they told me I'd be better suited for the trades. Not for any reason, but just because it was what they thought. I've been followed in the stores by clerks. Some have actually told me that they don't want me in there and have kicked me out of their stores. I've been spat at on the streets. I've had racial slurs yelled at me as cars drive by. I've been pulled over by the police more times than I can count. And it wasn't because I violated any laws. It was because they said I fit a description. Or they said they just had some questions they wanted me to answer. See, expectations like this, experiences like this teach you things. They taught me to be cautious, to stay quiet, keep my head down. They taught me that belonging wasn't guaranteed and that my safety was temporary. They tried to convince me that reporting these things, trying to seek justice, was pointless because so many of my experiences happened at the hands of the people I was supposed to be able to turn to for help. So no, these nightmares, they weren't random. They weren't just imagined out of thin air. They were stitched together from real events over the years, small and large acts of exclusion, bullying, hate. And I know I'm not alone in that. Last year, there were 467 incidents of hate crimes in this city. The majority of them targeting Jewish, LGBTQ2+, Black, Muslim, and Chinese communities. And those are just the ones we know about. The Department of Justice Canada estimates that about 78% of hate crimes go unreported. And I think that's kind of generous. I think it's a lot higher than that. So why aren't people reporting? Because they don't believe anything will change. Because they don't trust the system. They don't feel safe enough to speak up. Why don't people say anything? Because of fear, shame, distrust, and get this, hopelessness. See, when a lot of people think about hate crimes, they imagine extremists, dark, shadowy characters that live on the fringes of society that only show up to incite hate and then they disappear again. But from what I've seen both firsthand and secondhand, is that these things are being committed by the ordinary people, normal people, our co-workers, our neighbors, people that we like. See, we all have the capacity for hateful acts and words. And hate grows best where hope has withered away. When most people think about teams and organizations or communities, they see them as structures of how we can get things done, right? We share knowledge, we offer and receive support when we're together. And it's great for those things. But one of the most powerful and most often overlooked roles of humans connecting, of humans getting together, is that when we come together, connection fosters hope. When you're part of something bigger, when you see other people show up and care, it reminds us that we're not alone and that progress is possible. See, hope isn't just a feeling. Hope isn't wishful thinking. It's not blind optimism. I love the way that the psychologist Charles Snyder defines hope. He says hope requires three things. It requires a goal, a vision of what we aspire to. And then it requires a pathway. How do we get from here, where we are now, to there, what we aspire to? And the third thing is we need a sense of agency. Do I have the power? Do I have the skills? Do I have the wherewithal to be able to walk that path? When we have those things, we have hope. Hope is what keeps us going even when things are hard. As long as I know where I'm trying to get to, I know how to get there, and I have the capacity to walk that walk, then I have hope. You think about like a sports team that's losing badly. If they can see the way to win, if they believe they have the skills and the strategy, then they keep fighting. That's hope. So whether we're talking about a sports team, a community, a company, hope gives us protection. It gives us purpose. It gives us a sense of belonging. And here's the beautiful thing. When we are in community, when we are connected with each other, when one person's hope runs low, when they're lost in doubt and in fear, the group becomes their well that they can draw from, a source of hope that they can draw from. And you can draw from the collective hope of others until you replenish your own. But that well has to stay full. Because if too many people lose hope in the group, then the group's health withers away. Because hope isn't just personal, it's communal. Hope creates resilience. Without hope, there's no energy to move forward. Doubt begins to spread. Purpose fades. People withdraw and they begin protecting themselves. Connections fracture. Fear replaces trust, and cynicism takes root where optimism used to grow. The group loses resilience because resilience isn't just about enduring. It's about believing that there's something that's worth enduring for. And when hope disappears, the reasons to keep trying do as well. And so without hope to borrow, individuals are left to fend for themselves, and they become isolated. And isolation breeds more hopelessness, a dangerous cycle that is hard to break. This is why protecting our collective hope as a group isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Hopelessness is fertile grounds for hate. Hopelessness creates an ideal environment for hate because when people lose hope, they stop believing that positive change is possible. They feel trapped. They feel powerless, disconnected. When hope fades, the door opens wider for hate to come in because people experience a loss of agency. They feel like they have no control over their life, over their circumstances, what happens to them. They experience isolation and disconnection, which makes them susceptible to division and extremism. They seek simplified answers to complex problems, and blame is often one of the easiest answers we can jump to. There's an erosion of empathy where everyone else starts to become them and not us. Without hope, people look for something to hold on to. And too often, they choose resentment. They choose blame. They choose hate. Because it feels tangible. It feels clear. Even though it deepens and prolongs the suffering, it's like the empty calories of junk food. It might feel nourishing at the moment, but it deteriorates your health long term. Now, you might be thinking, this all sounds good, but how do we actually build hope? How do we move beyond feelings into action? We institutionalize hope. So institutionalized hope is the deliberate process of embedding clear goals and trusted systems and meaningful participation into a group, into a community, creating the conditions where people believe in a shared future, they trust the pathways to get there, and they feel empowered to play a role in making it happen. See, hope isn't a feeling. It's a collective agreement that we build together. Through the work that my team and I have done with corporations and nonprofits and government, we've developed a framework on how to institutionalize hope. We call it winning together. And it takes groups from simply gathering as individuals to uniting under a shared purpose, building trusted systems, and creating meaningful participation so that connection deepens, trust grows, and collaboration becomes second nature. So there's 3 stages of this framework. The first one is coming together, looking at how we unite as a group. Every group starts with a gathering, right? This was a gathering. We all came here today. People show up for all kinds of reasons. I take a job because I needed a paycheck. I moved to that neighborhood because it's close to my kids' schools. I asked that person out because I think they're funny and attractive, right? The gathering part is easy. But alignment is what makes the group move together. Alignment is where we move from individual reasons to shared purpose. It's where we clarify, what are we here to do? What do we stand for? What do we expect from each other? We're often brought together by events, right? Celebrations, shared pain, crisis. They bring us together, but that's not enough. Purpose, events are what cause us to show up, but purpose keeps us showing up over and over. The more diverse a group becomes across race and cultures, generations, the less we can rely on unspoken rules, right? In more homogeneous groups, people tend to follow invisible, this is just how we do things around here. But as diversity increases, common ground isn't always automatic. You have to name it. Clarity of purpose, shared values, intentional communication, these become the glue. In diverse groups, it's clarity, not similarity, that creates connection and unity. When people understand why they're here, what they're working towards, how they're expected to show up, it builds safety. And safety creates trust, and trust lays a foundation for hope. On March 15th, 2009, in Christchurch, New Zealand, it was just another day until it wasn't. Inside the Al Noor Mosque, families gathered in prayer. Outside, everything was as normal. And within moments, everything changed. A white supremacist live streamed going in and storming into 2 mosques, killing 51 people in cold blood. The shock was felt immediately. Grief overwhelmed the Muslim community. But what happened next was extraordinary. Tens of thousands of New Zealanders didn't just mourn, but they showed up in solidarity. People gathered in parks. They stood silently on sidewalks. They filled stadiums. Communities gathered in visuals, not just in Christ Church, but all across the country. There was silence. There was tears. And then there were voices speaking as one. Within hours, the Prime Minister got on TV before the world and said something so powerful, but so simple. He said, "They are us." This wasn't just a soundbite. It was a national call to action. They are us was not just an expression of sympathy. It was a declaration of belonging. It wasn't about them. It wasn't about us. It was one community, one people, one shared identity. And it wasn't just symbolic. The alignment of purpose sparked action. Gun reform legislation was introduced and passed within weeks. Vigils turned into interfaith coalitions. Neighbors became advocates. Conversations that were once restricted to religious spaces started spilling out into the public square. New Zealanders didn't just gather, they aligned. They moved beyond their individual differences of class and status, race, and they committed to a shared purpose. And as a result, the Muslim community reported feeling visible, protected, and now part of the broader national identity. Social cohesion strengthened in the month following, with trust in leadership increasing and community engagement increasing. Hate crime reporting structures were reviewed and analyzed and strengthened, giving the community clearer pathways towards justice. UNESCO said that shared purpose reduces identity-based violence by 25 to 30%. When a group is aligned in shared purpose, shared values, shared identity, it creates clarity. And that clarity builds trust, and that trust lays a foundation for hope. So to create alignment, we want to make sure that we are clarifying our purpose. Right? Be explicit about why you exist as a community, as a team, as an organization. Define the shared mission that transcends individual interest. We have to co-create commitments. So involve defining expectations. Everyone's involved in defining what the expectations, what the values are. Shared agreement helps to build ownership and accountability. And then we have to communicate the story often. Why do we do what we do? What is it that we believe? What do we value? And we repeat it. It's not a one-time story. It's a culture. Because culture is pretty much just stories. They're stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves. So we clarify purpose, co-create commitments, communicate the story. Once we've aligned, we're able to come together, we define what is it that we value, where are we trying to get to, how are we, what do we aspire to? The next stage is working together, and we're looking at how we operate. This is where a lot of organizations and communities struggle. Because it's one thing to have shared ideas about what we aspire to, but it's another thing to turn that purpose into something that people can trust. Because it's not enough to say we have shared values. Now we actually have to live them. And values are lived through the systems that we build, the decisions that we make, the processes that we follow, the policies that we uphold. This is where a lot of well-meaning groups fall apart. They may have great mission. The values are powerful on paper, but without the systems that reflect those values, people lose faith. They can't trust the process. People disengage, and disengagement can be a dangerous thing. See, hate doesn't need extremists to survive, to thrive. It just needs people to stop showing up, to stop trusting, to stop believing that change is possible. If we want to keep hope alive, we need trustworthy systems, ones that make fairness visible, that invite meaningful participation, that show people that this community is worth investing in. For decades, the black residents in Evanston, Illinois, were discriminated against structurally from the housing market. There was redlining policies that prevented them from living and buying properties in certain neighborhoods. There's predatory lending practices that made home ownership opportunities all but impossible. Generations were shut out of some of the most important pathways of building economic stability. Trust in the leadership was all but destroyed. Then in 2019, Evanston became the first U.S. city to approve a reparations program for black residents. They didn't just make the announcement and then hope it was going to work. They built the systems to ensure that it would. The black community leaders, they weren't just consulted, they were at the decision-making table from the very beginning. The program was funded through a cannabis tax, which was the deliberate acknowledgement of how drug laws have been used to hurt the black community for years. The city held public forums and listening sessions to ensure transparency and accountability. Regular updates were provided so that the community could see in real time how decisions were being made, how funds were being distributed. The first phase focused on housing, financial support for eligible black residents, to pay mortgages, to make critical repairs. But it wasn't about cutting of checks. This process was about repairing broken trust. It was about proving that the system could be accountable. The system could be transparent. The system could be equitable. And as a result, there was an increased trust in the city leadership, particularly among black residents. We saw civic engagement rise from historically marginalized communities. And the reparations initiative became a national model, inspiring other cities to see how they could explore the program. The Organization of Economic and Cooperation Development says that communities with strong systems have higher civic engagement and lower hate crime rates. Shared values only matter if they're experienced through the systems that we build. If people don't trust the system, they disengage. So as we're building out our systems, we want to make sure that everything we're building reflects the values. Every process, every policy, every decision. Systems must align with the community's shared purpose, with our shared values. Every decision reinforces fairness and inclusion and accountability. The systems need to be transparent and accessible. People need to know how decisions are made, and they need to trust that they have a voice in the process. We need to make information available and easy to understand. And then we need to follow through and stay accountable. So we're building feedback loops. We're not just running programs and then consulting after everything is done, but at every step of the journey, we are understanding, we're taking feedback, we're iterating, we're always reflecting on if the systems reflect our shared alignment, our shared purpose. So we've come together, we've established what aligns us. We're working together, figuring out how do we operate, what are the systems that we need in order to live out these values that we've identified. And the last is we're working together, and we're defining how do we participate. Because winning together happens when people aren't just participants, but they're protectors. They stand up. They speak up. They invest deeply in the success of the community. They don't just contribute, they commit. People can show up without buying in, but you can contribute without committing, but you don't win together until people take ownership. Until they feel responsible for the outcomes. Until we're invested in each other's success and not just our own. Commitment happens when people feel safe, when they feel valued, when they feel like they're a part of the solution. And it's what transforms a group of people from just working next to each other to a team that is working with each other. Because when people commit, they're no longer guests. They're not visitors. They're owners. And owners protect what they build. They protect what they invest in. They protect what they fight for. In a small town in rural Minnesota, the population was shrinking. Businesses closing. Schools were thinning out. The future looked bleak. Until new families started moving in. Refugees from Somalia. Immigrants from Central America, Southeast Asia. At first they were welcome, but kind of kept at arm's length, right? They had cultural events in the park. People were polite. But underneath the politeness, there was still that division. There was us, and there was them. And then something shifted. The town stopped asking the newcomers to join their community, and instead they started asking them to lead the community. They invited the Somali mothers to run for the school board. They encouraged the Latino business owners to join the Chamber of Commerce. They supported young immigrant leaders in their campaigns for town council, and many of them won. Once the leadership table was diversified, things began to change. Parks were redesigned to include everyone. Public safety policies started to reflect all the residents. Civic participation rose from town hall meetings to the voting booth. The town was no longer divided between the old-timers and the newcomers. It became a place where everyone belonged. They were committing, invested deeply in their collective future. Immigrant retention rose by 20%. Civic participation from both groups rose. Crime rates dropped. The local economy strengthened. Trust in the leadership soared. And get this, people reported experiencing a deep sense of belonging. Not as visitors, but as partners, building and shaping this community together. Communities with high sense of belonging see 25% fewer hate crimes. 73% of people said that they will actively advocate for their community when they trust the leadership and they feel committed to shared outcomes. People can contribute without committing, but we don't win together until people commit. Until they feel a sense of responsibility for the collective success and the protection of the community that they help build. So to invite this type of participation, we need to create psychological safety. People need to feel safe enough to fully participate. We need to foster environments where vulnerability is met with respect. We need to give clear roles that matter. So it's not about being performative, but giving people meaningful roles that they can participate in. People need to feel that they have influence over decisions and influence over outcome. That sense of agency. And we need to recognize and grow contributions. So celebrate people's efforts and their impact and provide pathways for growth and leadership. So we've walked through these 3 stages. Coming together, how do we align? Working together, how do we build the systems? And then winning together, how do we make sure there's meaningful participation? And if we do this well, if we build shared purpose and trusted systems, meaningful participation, something powerful happens. People connect. Communities become safer, more resilient. Hate has less room to grow. But there's something else we need to talk about. Something that humanizes this model. Even when we create the right conditions, we have alignment, we have the systems built out, we've mapped out participation in meaningful ways. Not everyone's going to connect right away. Some people come in ready to trust. They understand the process, they're bought in, they jump both feet right in. Others are more guarded. They've been hurt before. They've been promised things that haven't shown up in the way that they've been promised. Right? They've been invited to have a seat at the table, but nobody listened to them. They didn't feel safe enough to speak up when they were invited into that meeting. When that's your story, it can be harder to connect. It can be harder to trust, harder to hope. And that's what I call the connective capacity, which is the ability and the willingness to connect. And it's shaped by everyone's experiences that they've had up until now, right? Some of us walk in, our hearts wide open, we're ready to trust, we're ready to connect with people. Others carry so much armor around themselves from years of feeling the need to protect themselves. And if we're not careful, that group will be left behind. Not because they don't care, not because they don't want to be a part of the community, but they need more time. They need more clarity. They need to see the proof that this space is going to be different. They want to see that these systems can be trusted. They want to know that this group is safe. And this is why institutionalizing hope is so important. It's not just for the people who are participating, but it's for everyone else on the sidelines who's watching, wondering if they can trust again. When they see the clarity and purpose, and they see the consistency in practice, they see others stepping forward, it helps build that trust. And trust widens the circle. And the wider that circle of trust becomes, the stronger the community becomes. When we invest in relational safety, when we slow down and we build trust on purpose, engagement skyrockets. Teams and groups that prioritize trust and relational safety have 76% higher engagement. That's not just a number. That's not a statistic. That's a different future for a community, for an organization, for a team. A community where people feel safe enough to participate fully. A community where people choose commitment because they believe in the collective future. I'm happy to say that none of those nightmares I had before we moved came true. The dog in the backyard eventually came around to me. But I'd be lying to you if I told you I feel a deep sense of belonging in my neighborhood. I still don't see myself represented. I still get uneasy about sending my son off to school, wondering if similar things that were said and done to me are being done to him. Well, it wasn't at my house. I have seen slurs spray painted across the neighborhood, the N-word spray painted on my son's school, heard about the white supremacist manifesto ending up in lending libraries. I'm still faced with stuff. I still see things. But what's different for me today is that I've done a lot of work to stand firm in who I am and to re-understand myself beyond the limits of who I told I was. And I've learned how to stretch my connective capacity to make sure that my well stays full. And now I've committed my life to building spaces of hope for myself, for my family, for all of us. So when you're filled with doubt, when you start to question if change is possible, when you're tired of hoping, you can borrow mine. Borrow my hope until you have enough of your own. Borrow my hope that change is possible the next time you find yourself doom scrolling. Borrow my hope that the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice the next time you're inundated with world news. Borrow my hope until you have enough of your own. And when you do, be that well for somebody else. That's what connection, that's what institutionalized hope is all about. It's not wishful thinking. It's setting clear goals, building trusted systems, creating meaningful participation. That's how we make hope real. Hate is a symptom. Hopelessness, disconnection, broken trust, these are the causes. But when we institutionalize hope, we give hate less room to grow. So whether you're leading a team, you're running a department, shaping the city, the principles stay the same. Winning together isn't always just about these big gestures, these big movements. It's about the choices that we're making every single day in building connection, in fostering hope, in leading change. So as you work towards bigger goals, designing programs or launching initiatives, supporting the community, follow the framework. Come together with clarity and shared purpose. Work together through trusted systems and accountability. And then win together by creating spaces where people can commit and contribute. No matter your role, no matter who you are, you have a part to play in our individual lives, in our families, our workplaces, and the community at large. It starts here. It starts now. It starts with us together. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Beautiful.
My wife always... Thank you. My wife always scolds me for not taking a picture when I'm at these things. So can we take a picture real quick? All right. Thank you very much.